A simple graduation ceremony turned into a battle of honor and respect when two guards made the grave mistake of trying to force a black Marine to leave. What followed was a stunning display of unity, strength, and unwavering loyalty, as 6 SEALs stepped in to rewrite the rules of engagement and stand by their brother in arms. The day was meant to be a celebration, a milestone in the life of a father and his son. Graduation ceremonies are filled with joy and pride, as families gather to honor the hard work and perseverance of their loved ones. However, this day took an unexpected and troubling turn due to a simple but significant misstep by 2 security guards. The guards, who were tasked with maintaining order and ensuring that the ceremony went smoothly, did not fully comprehend the gravity of their actions when they approached a black Marine. The black Marine was standing proudly in the audience, watching his son walk across the stage to receive his diploma. He was a man who had dedicated his life to the service of his country, someone who had sacrificed time, effort, and energy in the line of duty. His uniform, adorned with the patches and insignia that represented years of hard work and unwavering commitment, stood as a testament to his honor and achievements. His pride in his son's success was immeasurable, and the ceremony, which was supposed to be a moment of joy, was the pinnacle of a long and arduous journey. But the guards did not recognize the man in front of them. They saw only a Marine, a figure dressed in uniform, but not one who commanded respect and reverence. To them, he was simply another person attending the ceremony. They did not recognize the years of service, the sacrifice, or the honor that came with being a Marine. They saw a man in a uniform and perhaps viewed him as just another individual who didn't belong. This misjudgment, although seemingly small, was a dangerous one. The guards approached him with an authoritative air, directing him to leave the premises. Their request was swift, without explanation or context, and there was no recognition of the Marine's rank or the importance of the event he was attending. To them, this was simply a case of someone out of place, someone who didn't fit into their definition of who belonged at the ceremony. The Marine, standing tall and composed, did not immediately comply. He knew his rights, and he understood the responsibility that came with the uniform he wore. He had served his country in the most demanding and challenging situations, and he had earned the right to stand wherever he pleased, especially at a moment as meaningful as his son's graduation. He was a proud father and a proud Marine, and neither his identity nor his service would be disregarded. As the guards insisted he leave, he could feel the weight of the situation growing. The simple, disrespectful demand seemed to devalue everything he had worked for in his life. It was not just about leaving the ceremony. It was about the recognition and respect he had earned as a veteran, as a father, and as a person who had given so much for his country. Despite the pressure and the mounting tension, the Marine stood his ground. He did not raise his voice, nor did he show signs of anger or frustration. Instead, he maintained his composure and calmly explained to the guards that he had every right to be there. His voice, steady and unwavering, conveyed the message that he was not just any person. He was a Marine, and he deserved to be treated with dignity and respect. Yet it became increasingly clear that the guards were not fully grasping the weight of his words. They continued to push him, dismissing his explanations and focusing instead on their perception of the situation. They seemed oblivious to the fact that they were speaking to a man who had given years of his life to ensure their safety and security. The guards, it seemed, had failed to understand the significance of the uniform, the history, the training, and the sacrifice that it represented. What they didn't realize was that this was not just an isolated encounter. It was a reflection of a much deeper issue, a problem rooted in systemic biases and a lack of understanding about the sacrifices made by veterans, particularly black veterans. It was a small act, but one that carried immense weight. The guards' actions were dismissive, reducing the Marine to just another person they could control. In doing so, they failed to acknowledge the respect and honor that should have been afforded to someone like him, someone who had given so much for the country they both lived in. As the interaction continued, the Marine remained composed. His thoughts were a mixture of disbelief and disappointment. How could two people, entrusted with the responsibility of overseeing the safety and enjoyment of this event, overlook the humanity of the person standing before them? How could they fail to see beyond the surface and recognize the dignity and respect that should have been afforded to him? The answer was simple. They did not recognize who he was or what he had done. And in that moment, it became clear that the Marine would have to fight for the respect he deserved, even if it meant challenging the authority of the guards. In the end, what should have been a proud moment for the Marine, his son, and their family became a battle for recognition and respect. The guard's misstep wasn't just an unfortunate mistake. It was a glaring example of the deeper issues of prejudice and lack of understanding that still persist today. It was a small incident, but it had the potential to spiral out of control and ruin the day. However, the Marine's unwavering strength, dignity, and composure would prove to be the turning point in what would become a much larger confrontation. The situation quickly escalated as the guards, seemingly convinced they were acting within their rights and following protocol, continued to insist that the Marine leave the premises. Their voices were firm, their expressions authoritative, and their demeanor rigid as they enforced what they believed was a necessary action. However, what they failed to recognize in that moment was the weight of their request. They were not speaking to just any individual. They were addressing a Marine, a man whose service and sacrifice went far beyond the simple confines of a security protocol. The guards remained fixated on his uniform, seeing it as nothing more than an outfit, a piece of clothing that signified duty, but not the years of unwavering service behind it. This failure to acknowledge the true essence of who the Marine was, the depth of his experience and the honor that came with his service, was a critical misjudgment. Their authority, based on the limited perspective of their training, clashed with the Marine's own sense of self-respect and the unspoken authority that stemmed from his time in the military. The Marine's calm response contrasted sharply with the growing pressure from the guards. His years of training in high-stress environments had taught him how to remain poised, how to control his emotions and actions in the face of adversity. In this moment, he was the embodiment of restraint, dignity, and respect, even as the guards pushed him further. The guards, on the other hand, seemed to misunderstand the significance of the situation. They believed that they were simply performing their duty, upholding a set of rules without realizing that those rules, when applied without understanding, could harm rather than protect. Their limited view of the Marine was shaped by his appearance alone, a uniform that carried no meaning for them beyond its surface. To them, the uniform was an indication of authority, but they failed to recognize the personal history, the battles fought, and the sacrifices made by the individual who wore it. They were not simply facing a uniform, they were facing a man whose very presence demanded respect, a man who had given years of his life to defend the very freedom and security that allowed them to perform their duties. Despite the increasing pressure, the Marine remained calm, his voice steady and controlled. His demeanor, though composed, conveyed a silent strength, one that the guards were either unwilling or unable to understand. They continued to push, their authority challenged by a quiet, unwavering force. The Marine's patience was tested, but his sense of duty to his son, to the moment he was supposed to be experiencing, held him firm. He wasn't just fighting to stay at the ceremony for his own sake. He was fighting for the respect that he and other veterans like him had earned through years of sacrifice. The guards, believing they were acting with the power vested in them, misinterpreted his composure as weakness. They thought that by maintaining their insistence, they could force the Marine to comply. But what they failed to recognize was that the Marine was not going to be swayed by force or intimidation. He understood the power dynamics at play, but his response was rooted in a much deeper understanding of what true authority meant. It was not about brute force. It was about the authority earned through actions, respect, and the unspoken bond of those who have served. As the guards' demands grew more insistent, they continued to overlook the Marine's right to be there, both as a father and a Marine. Their authority was not questioned in a direct or overt way, but it was undermined by the presence of someone who knew his worth and had nothing to prove. This clash of authority wasn't just about a disagreement over rules. It was a battle between a superficial, rigid power and a deeper, more inherent sense of self-respect and honor. The more the guards pressed, the more they seemed to lose sight of the broader implications of their actions. They were not just attempting to enforce a rule, they were dismissing the lived experiences of someone who had sacrificed much more than they could ever comprehend. The Marine's patience was not a sign of submission, it was a reflection of the respect he had for himself and the discipline that had been instilled in him over years of service. He understood that this moment, this conflict, was about more than just winning a small battle. It was about maintaining his dignity and the honor of those who had come before him. Meanwhile, the guards, who were only trained to follow protocol, remained oblivious to the true meaning of the Marine's words. They lacked the depth of understanding that came with years of service, the experience of facing true adversity, and the knowledge that true authority is not always visible. They had no frame of reference to understand that the Marine was not merely a man in a uniform, he was a symbol of something far greater. As the tension grew, it became clear that the true struggle was not over the Marine's right to remain at the ceremony, but over the recognition of what he represented and the failure of the guards to comprehend that significance. The clash of authority became a moment of reckoning for both sides. For the Marine, it was a test of character, a chance to stand firm and assert his dignity in the face of disrespect. For the guards, it was a moment where their perception of authority and power was challenged. They were forced to confront the limitations of their understanding and the flaws in their approach. And in that moment, the Marine's calm resolve stood as a reminder that true authority comes not from enforcing rules without context, but from understanding the deeper meaning behind them. As tensions between the Marine and the guards continued to escalate, the situation began to spiral out of control. The Marine remained composed, but the insistence of the guards showed no signs of abating. However, unknown to the guards, the Marine's fellow soldiers, 6 Navy SEALs, had been notified of the developing conflict. The Marine's comrades, brothers in arms, understood the gravity of the situation. Their arrival would signal a pivotal shift in the balance of power, one that would not only de-escalate the conflict, but also remind the guards and everyone else involved of the true meaning of authority and respect. The SEALs' arrival, though unexpected by the guards, was a decisive moment. They were not dressed in military uniforms, nor did they immediately advertise their identity. To the untrained eye, they appeared to be just another group of individuals walking through the area. However, to those who knew the signs of highly trained professionals, it was clear that these men were far from ordinary. The SEALs had honed their skills in some of the most demanding and high-stakes situations in the world. Their presence, though subtle at first glance, carried a weight that was impossible to ignore. The guards, still focused on their efforts to remove the Marine from the ceremony, did not recognize the impending change in the situation. They believed that their authority was absolute, that their power over the Marine was unquestioned. However, as the SEALs drew closer, the dynamics of the scene began to shift dramatically. The guards, who had been acting with a sense of entitlement, now sensed an unfamiliar energy around them. The presence of the SEALs, calm yet undeniably authoritative, was the catalyst that would unravel the fragile power they had built. The SEALs, having been notified of the incident, understood the need for a controlled approach. They knew that their intervention was not about escalating the situation further. It was about restoring order, reinforcing respect, and ensuring that their brother-in-arms was not unjustly treated. They approached the Marine, positioning themselves between him and the guards, their movements deliberate and measured. They did not need to raise their voices or engage in aggressive confrontation. Their very presence was enough to convey their message. To the guards, the SEALs represented an authority they could not hope to challenge. While they had been focused on enforcing their limited view of the situation, the SEALs embodied a different kind of authority, one earned through rigorous training, sacrifice, and a deep understanding of the responsibility that came with wielding power. The moment the guards saw the SEALs, their demeanor changed. The confidence that had driven them to challenge the Marine began to falter. The guards, now confronted with a force they could not match, understood that they were out of their depth. They could no longer push forward with the same forceful determination they had previously displayed. The SEALs were not here to escalate the situation with violence or intimidation. Rather, they sought to bring it to a swift and controlled resolution. Their presence alone carried the weight of years of experience in situations far more dangerous than this one. They did not need to explain themselves or prove their strength. Their reputation, built over countless operations and missions, preceded them. The guards, recognizing the SEALs as highly trained professionals, had no choice but to acknowledge the shift in authority. They had been dealing with a Marine, but now they were faced with a group of men who had achieved an even higher level of recognition and respect. As the SEALs stood between the Marine and the guards, their posture radiated calm authority. They made no threats, nor did they engage in aggressive verbal exchanges. Instead, they communicated their intent through their presence and their actions. They were not there to create a scene or escalate the tension. They were there to ensure that respect was restored and that the Marine was allowed to remain at the ceremony. The guards, realizing the situation was beyond their control, began to back down. The sense of authority they had once felt evaporated, replaced by a quiet understanding that they were now dealing with individuals who operated on an entirely different level. This shift in power was not about dominance or confrontation. It was about the SEALs asserting their role as protectors, not only of their fellow Marine, but of the principles of respect, dignity, and fairness. The guards, who had originally been so determined to exert their control, now found themselves in a position of humility. The SEALs, with their calm and measured approach, took control of the situation without ever needing to raise their voices. Their intervention was a reminder of what true authority looked like, earned through experience, service, and an unwavering commitment to doing what is right. The guards, now fully aware of the misstep they had made, understood that the Marine was not alone. He was part of a community of warriors who stood by one another, no matter the circumstances. The SEAL's arrival was a powerful reminder that the Marine was not just any individual. He was a member of a larger family, one that would always rise to his defense when needed. The guards, their confidence shattered, could do little but step aside as the SEALs took the reins and resolved the situation with the grace and authority that only those with such an extensive background could possess. The Marine, once again, was allowed to stay and witness the moment he had been waiting for, the proud graduation of his son. The moment the SEALs positioned themselves between the Marine and the guards, it became evident that this was not merely a show of strength, but a stand of honor and respect. The SEALs, without uttering a single word, communicated everything that needed to be said. Their posture was one of unwavering confidence, back straight, faces calm, and eyes focused. They were not just standing there physically. They were standing in solidarity with their fellow Marine, affirming that the situation was no longer one of confrontation, but of resolute support. Their silence was powerful, and in that silence, a profound message was delivered. The guards, who had previously been determined to assert their authority, found themselves at a loss. The SEALs did not approach with aggression, nor did they escalate the situation. They simply stood their ground, creating an unspoken barrier between the Marine and those who had tried to push him out. It was a display of strength, but more importantly, it was a display of respect, a respect for the Marine's service, his dignity, and his right to be present at his son's graduation. The SEALs were not there to dominate or intimidate. They were there to make it clear that their fellow Marine would not be disrespected, especially on such an important day. One of the SEALs, recognizing the need to resolve the situation without further conflict, stepped forward and addressed the guards in a tone that was calm but firm. His voice carried the weight of years of experience in demanding situations, and it was clear that he did not need to raise his voice to command respect. He used his rank and authority not to threaten, but to calmly explain the gravity of the situation. The guards, who had been so confident in their initial actions, were now forced to confront the reality of their mistake. The SEAL's words were measured and deliberate, and as he spoke, the power of his experience and his commitment to honoring his fellow servicemen became abundantly clear. The guards, realizing their error, were left speechless. The force of their actions had been met with a quiet but resolute stand, and they could no longer maintain the same stance of superiority. The SEALs had not needed to engage in any heated argument or display of force. Their mere presence, backed by the weight of their authority and experience, was enough to shift the dynamic. It was a profound reminder to the guards that true authority is not derived from the power one holds in a moment, but from the respect earned over time, through service, and through understanding the broader context of a situation. The silence that followed was palpable. No words could undo the mistake the guards had made, nor could they explain away their actions. What remained was the undeniable presence of the SEALs, soldiers who had earned their place through sacrifice, and who now stood between the guards and the Marine, making it clear that the Marine's dignity would not be compromised. The guards, now fully aware of the gravity of the situation, could not challenge the authority of the SEALs. They understood, perhaps for the first time, that their authority was not absolute, and that it was subject to a higher standard of respect. In that moment, the power dynamics shifted completely. The presence of the SEALs spoke volumes even without words. They had taken the responsibility upon themselves to ensure that the Marine, and by extension, the honor of the military service, was not disrespected. They had asserted their role as protectors of their own, and their stand was a declaration of their unwavering loyalty to each other. It was not a gesture born of aggression, but of an unshakable commitment to honor. This was not just about the Marine's right to be at the ceremony. It was about ensuring that those who had served and those who had earned their place were treated with the respect they deserved. The guards, now fully aware of their mistake, fell silent. They were no longer in a position to dictate the terms of the situation. The SEALs had not only taken control of the moment, they had made it clear that any further disrespect would not be tolerated. The power of the SEALs was not just in their physical strength or their training, but in their ability to maintain composure in the face of adversity. They did not need to use force. They simply used their presence and the strength of their convictions to communicate that the Marine would not be disrespected. As the situation resolved, it became clear that the Marine would remain at the ceremony and his honor would remain intact. The SEALs, with their quiet but undeniable authority, had ensured that the day would not be marred by disrespect. The guards, in their silence, had learned a powerful lesson. Authority is not about dominance. It is about respect, understanding, and the responsibility to honor those who have earned their place. In the end, the Marine stood tall, his dignity preserved, not by confrontation or aggression, but by the unspoken power of those who stood with him, ensuring that respect would be upheld. With the SEALs' intervention, the situation was swiftly brought under control. The guards, realizing their misstep and the authority of the Marines and SEALs, no longer had the strength to continue their demands. The Marine, who had been caught in an unjust confrontation, was finally allowed to remain at the ceremony. This turn of events, though marked by tension and conflict, transformed into a powerful affirmation of the values that bound the Marine and his brothers in arms, values such as honor, respect, and the unshakable bonds of loyalty. The Marine was not just a passive participant in the ceremony. He was a man whose character had been tested, and in the end vindicated by the quiet yet unyielding stand of his fellow soldiers. The atmosphere of the graduation ceremony, which had initially been tainted by the discord caused by the guards, regained its original celebratory tone. The Marine, now with the unwavering support of his brothers in arms, watched as his son proudly stepped up to receive his diploma. This moment, one of personal achievement and joy, was not just a reflection of the son's hard work, but also of the values passed down by his father, the respect earned through service, the dignity in standing firm when faced with adversity, and the unspoken strength of family. The Marine's presence at the ceremony was no longer a reminder of the conflict, but rather a symbol of the strength of character that had led him through life's many challenges. The SEALs, who had played such a pivotal role in restoring the balance of power, stood in the background. Their presence, though quiet, was a constant reminder of the brotherhood that existed within the military, a brotherhood that transcended ranks, uniforms, and individual missions. Their vigilance, however subtle, was a testament to their commitment to protect their own no matter the cost. They were not there for recognition or applause. Their sole purpose was to ensure that the Marine, a fellow serviceman, was treated with the dignity he deserved. And in doing so, they demonstrated a profound truth, that the bonds forged through service are not easily broken, and that these bonds will stand firm in the face of injustice. The ceremony, which could have ended in humiliation for the Marine, instead became a testament to the power of unity and mutual respect. It was not just about the Marine standing at his son's side, proud and dignified, but about the silent but powerful support he received from those who had walked similar paths and understood the depth of his experience. The SEALs' intervention had not only resolved the immediate conflict, but had also reminded everyone present that the true strength of a warrior lies not in physical power, but in the bonds that connect them to their comrades and their sense of responsibility to protect those bonds. As the ceremony continued, the Marine stood tall, surrounded by the quiet strength of those who had ensured his presence would not be marred by an unjust confrontation. His son's achievement was a reflection of not just his own hard work, but also of the legacy of honor and perseverance that had been passed down through generations. The Marine's role in his son's graduation was no longer overshadowed by the earlier conflict. Instead, it became a moment of profound personal pride, not only as a father, but as a man whose integrity had been tested and upheld. The SEALs' commitment to their brother was a clear message to all. No matter the cost, they would stand by their own. Their action was not just an intervention in a single moment, but a reminder of the unspoken code of conduct that governs the lives of those who serve. The respect that the Marine had earned through his years of service was not to be dismissed by anyone regardless of their position or authority, and the SEALs ensured that this respect was upheld, demonstrating that the values of loyalty, honor, and respect are not merely abstract ideals, but are the foundation of the relationships that sustain the military community. In the end, the ceremony was a reflection of something far greater than individual achievement. It was a celebration of the strength of community, the power of standing up for one another, and the importance of preserving dignity in the face of adversity. The Marine's presence at his son's graduation, supported by the SEALs, became a symbol of resilience and brotherhood, an enduring reminder that true warriors are never alone and that the bonds of service run deeper than any surface-level authority. Through their collective action, the SEALs had restored not just order but dignity, a dignity that would resonate far beyond that day, reminding everyone present of the unbreakable ties that unite those who serve in the name of honor and duty.